This is 4.8 part 3, where we are going to graph a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. And we're going to see that we're going to have imaginary solutions. And you're actually going to have two imaginary solutions. So let's add that in here. We have two imaginary solutions. So what we want to do is, again, set this equation equal to 0. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides. And I get x squared minus 6x plus 10 equals 0. And we've looked at equations with two solutions, two real solutions, so the parabola crossed the x-axis twice. One real solution, the parabola crossed the x-axis once, and that was the vertex. And two imaginary solutions, which means the parabola won't cross the x-axis at all. And you've seen this when we've graphed, but we didn't really talk about it too much. But you might have a parabola which looks something like this. It's perfectly possible, all right? Very possible, all right? So it's going to open up. We had our vertex here, and it's never going to cross the x-axis. So we're going to get some imaginary solutions here. So we've got x squared minus 6x plus 10. We're going to identify our a, our b, and our c. Our a is 1. Our b is negative 6. And our c is positive 10. We've got our quadratic formula, which is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we've got x equals the opposite of b, the opposite of negative 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, or negative 6 squared, minus 4ac, which is minus 4, times 1 times 10. That's all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. So we have x equals the opposite of negative 6, which is positive 6, plus or minus the square root of 36. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times 10 is negative 40, so we have minus 40 all over 2. And lastly, we have 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 40 gives us negative 4 all over 2. So we have two imaginary solutions because we're going to get a negative underneath the square root, and we know how to deal with that now because we've dealt with imaginary numbers. So that negative simply turns into an I times the square root of 4 over 2. X equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2, so we have 2i over 2. And here we want to make sure we are simplifying. We want to make sure we can simplify, and we're going to look at 2 going into 6 and 2 going into 2. So it looks like 6 divided by 2 is going to give us 3, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is going to give us 1, or simply I. 1 times I is I. So our two imaginary solutions are x equals 3 plus or minus I. And what does that look like? Well, let's go ahead and plug in x squared minus 6x plus 10 into our calculator. So I haven't done that yet. I apologize. So we'll go to y equals, clear this out, and we'll go x squared minus 6x plus 10. And we want to see what that's going to look like. And hopefully we'll see a graph somehow that's not going to touch the x-axis. So when I hit zoom 6, we'll see it graphed. And, got close. Alright, but the parabola came down, didn't hit the x-axis, and then went back up. So we have two imaginary solutions because we'd never cross the x-axis. So I'm confident that 3 plus or minus I is correct. Alright, that's part 3.